Coming up on Windows Weekly, what is Office 15 really like? Well, Paul's going to tell you. Windows 8 Consumer Preview Edition causes all kinds of confusion. Google is becoming a decision engine, and a whole lot more.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiT.
Bandwidth for Windows Weekly is provided by Cachefly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is Windows Weekly with Paul Thurrott and Mary Jo Foley, episode 252, recorded March 15th, 2012. Is there an easy way to explain this? This episode of Windows Weekly is brought to you by GoToMyPC. GoToMyPC apps are the missing link for remote access to turn your iPad and iPhone into your office computer. Visit GoToMyPC.com for your free 30-day trial with promo code WINDOWS. And by Hover.com. Hover is domain name registration and management that's simple. Upgrade to a premium domain and trade in your old clunkers. Visit windows.hover.com. And by Audible.com. To download a free audiobook of your choice, go to audible.com/windows. It's time for Windows Weekly. This is the show where we talk about everything to do with Microsoft. If they're talking about Office 15 or Windows 8 or Windows Phone 7 or Windows Phone 8 or whatever you could think of, that's what we do here. I'm Iyaz Akhtar, filling in for Leo Laporte, who is on assignment at the Hall of Justice, where there's a roundtable discussion of whether Batman should be kicked out of the Justice League. It's a very strange thing, but he's got to be there for that. But thankfully, we have Paul Thurrott. How are you doing, Paul?
Doing well. It's the Ides of March today.
Yes, it is. How are you celebrating this day?
I'm going to stab someone in the back.
That's good. Let's keep Paul in front of me as much as we can. And we have Mary Jo Foley.
It's just a little thing I do every year.
How are you doing, Mary Jo?
I'm doing well, thank you.
And how are you celebrating this Ides of March?
I'm actually going to, after the show is over, not now, uncork my third home brew, codenamed Cairo.
How could it not be codenamed Caesar?
Oh. That would have been,
you missed it.
Would have been good. That would have been good.
Yeah, my tweet today, which I was corrected earlier, but my tweet today is today I order a Caesar salad and stab it 23 times.
Nice. And, really, and someone corrected you on the internet. That's
Did you believe
so
that?
Rare.
They're telling me that the Caesar salad has nothing to do with Caesar. Well,
that's
Julius
what they
Caesar.
Corrected you on?
Well, it was Colin in the back when I just came in. But
oh man,
he's on the internet, and that counts. So yeah, if you guys want to know the history of Caesar salad, you can go check out Bing and do a search for that. Let's talk about Office 15 because I don't think Microsoft has a Caesar product just yet, but they do have Office 15. There's a technical preview. We've seen a lot of leaks, a lot of screenshots. People are saying there are all kinds of weird modes. But Paul, you've got a ton of screenshots. You've been testing this out for a while, right?
Yeah, for a little while.
Would you like to tell us about it?
Or? A little bit.
Okay, a little bit.
Yeah, it was very late January. It might have even been the last day of January or near the last day of January. Microsoft made the oddest of posts. To one of their Office blogs where they said, hey, we're releasing this technical preview to just some of our customers, and you can't have it. It was very strange. With this sort of a vague promise that there would be a summer beta for this release. So, of course, upon hearing that, I thought, well, I've got to get this thing, right? I mean, I want to see what this looks like. I had gotten a very early build of Office 15 last year, a long, long time ago, and didn't see any major differences between it and Office 2010, the current version that's currently in the market. And I was a little bit curious whether installing that old build on a tablet might bring out some different functionality, but then this finally did fall in my lap, so able to check it out. So, yeah, there's some interesting stuff in here. I mean, I think the big deal is that obviously it works a lot like the current version of Office if you're on a desktop. And then for those people who are using a touch-based tablet, which is what I was most interested in testing it on, it has kind of a full screen mode with larger touchable buttons that you can turn on it's not a Metro app. It's not what Microsoft calls a pure Metro app, but it's got kind of a Metro style to it, certainly. And I think it's something that as you switch back and forth on a tablet between this app and some true Metro apps, the effect isn't as jarring as it would be with a traditional Explorer style app. So it's nice looking. I mean, that chart you're showing right now, which is something that comes up in all of the document-based versions of these applications, is very reminiscent of what you see on the Mac. in the sense that they show you those document templates right up front on the Mac version of Office. And so that's something they're finally bringing to Windows as well.
You know, we've been parsing all these screenshots. What's with the circles on the top of the menu bar? Could you go back to that shot?
Yeah.
What do they mean, Paul?
I just think it's a visual design cue that emulates the similar circles that are available on the Windows 8 Consumer Preview start screen.
You sure it has nothing to do with the Xbox with its circles?
I'm not sure of that.
What I'm saying, I'm starting this rumor right now.
What they look like is touch points, don't they?
Oh, maybe. I'm going to say it's Office 15 on Xbox because that's even more confusing. Okay. I don't know why you do
that. That I cannot verify.
You don't? Oh, you cannot or you won't?
Exactly.
So I'm looking at the really stripped down version of Office 15. It looks really clean. And then if you keep scrolling down, you see that return of the ribbon, which is minimized by default.
Right.
Is it just me, or the ribbon seems to be counter all of Metro? Like, it doesn't seem like it fits within that universe where it's really clean and simple. Yeah. When you bring this thing back.
By the way, that's fair to say, but I would also point out that the very notion of a productivity application is counter to Metro. You know, Metro,
good point.
Like the iPad, is designed for these kind of consumption devices where not the exclusive nature of what you do, but the primary nature of what you do is going to be reading, enjoying content, doing that kind of thing, you know, reading web pages and so forth. When you really get into the nitty-gritty of writing a Word document or editing an Excel spreadsheet or creating a PowerPoint presentation, yes, you can do some of that on the touch screen, but mostly that's going to be keyboard, mouse. And, you know, this is really a desktop productivity app. It's not a junior version of Office 2010. It's basically Office 2010 plus some little niceties around touch. So I hear what you're saying, and you're certainly right, but I think that, you know, maybe that's the point. It's a different kind of app.
You think that's why Microsoft will not call this a flat-out Metro app? They just keep saying it's a desktop app that has Metro influences, but Metro's all about simplicity.
Yeah, that is what it is. It's not a Metro app. It runs on the desktop.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, because to be, you know, what's called a Metro-style app, it means you have to be written to use the WinRT framework for Windows 8, and this app is not written that way. It's a desktop app.
Yeah, what you just said is a giant pet peeve of mine right now, because I'm writing a book about Windows 8, and as was the case with the book about Windows Phone 7 that I wrote a couple of years ago, one of the things I try to pigeonhole these guys on very early on is I need to know what the language is, what you call things. And one of the very annoying things about start right at the root of it is that environment, the WinRT runtime environment, and the Metro style apps that run on top of it doesn't have a name, and that drives me crazy. You can say the Windows desktop and everyone knows exactly what you mean, but to refer to that other thing, you kind of have to start making stuff up because it has no official name. So we might call it Metro. You know, Microsoft would tell you that we don't need to give it a name because it's just Windows. You know, it's the underlying operating system. But the problem is the underlying operating system in Windows never looked like this before. So this is like a thing, you know. They'll tell you that the charm bar is not a charm bar. That's just the charms in a bar on the side of the screen, you know. And it's this kind of naming inconsistency and not just like an inability, but a complete lack of desire to accurately name anything that drives me kind of crazy. I was in the Internet Explorer 10 post I did the other day. I talked about a navigation bar and a tab switcher, which is what every other app calls an app bar in Windows 8 and also on Windows Phone. And here we are with yet another name for something, you know. And I wish they would decide on that stuff. I don't like it. I don't like that there's no good name for that stuff.
No, every time
I think, though.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, I think part of the reason they're not being that precise about it is because they want to gloss over it, too. You know, like they'll just call Office 15 a Metro app, right? And so only a few people will know to say, so is it a Metro style app? You know, is it built to use the WinRT framework, or is it just have some Metro looking elements to it? So, you know, it's kind of like what they do with Windows Phone, right? It runs Windows Compact Embedded, but it's really just running Windows. And I think they're doing the same kind of a thing here, just to kind of make it sound very simple. But, you know, for developers, the distinction is very big. So
I call me crazy, but I think words are important. I mean, I think that being able to name something is important. I mean, that's how you understand it fully. I don't like that. I just don't like it. You know, Internet Explorer 10 is a beautiful example. There are actually two applications in Windows 8 called Internet Explorer 10. One is a Metro-styled app, as they call it, and the other one is a traditional desktop app. They're completely different applications. They just are. I mean, they use the same underlying rendering engines and share some technologies, and they share some features, even though they're implemented completely separately. But they just call it Internet Explorer 10 like it was a thing, and it's not a thing. It's two different things. And I just wish there was in other words, if I want to quickly say Internet Explorer 10 for desktop, why isn't there a way to say that other than what I just said, which is actually kind of convoluted?
It looks like Microsoft is completely freaked out about the concept of confusing people. I mean, the funny
really?
thing
Because they're doing an awesome job.
I know. I think they're terrified of it, and they're trying to compromise like crazy. But the thing is, it's so difficult to somehow get people to go, you know what? Look, just don't worry what it's called. Just use it, and you'll understand. I mean, I know this is immediately. I'm going to jump into Apple here, right? Apple doesn't really give you names of things. You're like, okay, that's the dock, I guess. That's the dock options, but you don't really think of what is that thing on the top called? Is that the menu bar? It's the menu bar. You have to name these things yourself. But
if you look at Apple's developer documents, those things do have names. They do have names. And if you wanted to write a book about the iPhone or the iPad, it would be very easy to find out what every single little element on the screen was called. And the Microsoft stuff, I mean, we'll see because that's one of the things I'm paying attention to. But so far, it's been vague and it's been contradictory. And it's difficult because not just because you're writing a book, you just want to talk. We want to talk about it here. What do I mean when I say Internet Explorer 10? I have to explain that before we can continue.
Vague and contradictory. Actually, that might be the theme of Office 15 and Windows 8 because it's like, and actually a lot of the news. Remember, for how long were we saying, will Windows on ARM have a will have a desktop? And Microsoft wouldn't give a clear answer. They went with vague and contradictory information. So. Good on you, Microsoft, being consistent in your inconsistency. But also,
one more thing to say about Office 15 too that we haven't said yet. A few people have been asking about Moria, which is the mystery app that was supposed to be in Office 15. That's kind of like a Canvas program for OneNote, similar to that style, where you can kind of assemble all your multimedia elements in one place. I asked Paul about it too, since he's got the whole preview there, and sounds like it's not in the preview yet. If it is,
I don't see it.
Or it's at least not called out as a separate app for those who keep at.
Yeah, the only anomaly that I saw was they have. I'd have to look it up what it's called now, but they have an application. It's called Microsoft My Site Documents, and Microsoft My Site is obviously going to be a thing, like a service. There's also a reference to a My Office service, but that Microsoft My Site Documents actually just runs SharePoint Workspace, which is an app that existed in the previous version of Office. That before that was called Groove, and I guess that's just an evolution of that. But other than that, I've not seen anything like that. Actually, the OneNote thing is interesting though, and maybe this hints at that. Let me bring up the app real quick so I can look at it to refresh my memory. But most of these apps have those ribbons at the top, even Outlook, and they're minimized by default, so you get a much cleaner UI. OneNote is the one app that doesn't, and OneNote in Office 2010 does have a ribbon, and it's not really clear how you can get away with this thing not having a ribbon. It needs there are other commands going on. So right now, it's very clear looking at OneNote that something is missing. And so that, I think, lends some credence to the notion that that thing that Mary Jo is talking about is going to happen, that it is something, that will integrate into this. It's just not there right now.
What kind of SkyDrive integration does Office 15 bring? I mean, is there like a default? How does that work together, Paul?
Yeah, so in like a document type application like Word, obviously, when you do save as, SkyDrive is one of the choices. It's right there. If you think about the way Office works today, that stuff is, I think it's done through Share. I'd have to look at it, but it's sort of like let me just bring it up rather than guess. Oh, I can't because I installed it on this computer. So I can't bring up Office right now, but it's a little different in Office 15, I think is the way to say it. Yeah, so you have that picture there where SkyDrive, I was interested to see, is the top choice, right? Not computer like you would expect. So when you do a save, well, if you just do a save, let me click on that. Get out of there. If you just do a save, actually goes to save as on a blank document. That's interesting. So the first choice is, in fact, SkyDrive. So, deep integration right there. In fact, the only document I've really created in this thing, I saved to SkyDrive, and then you work on it normally. And You can bring it up the next time you bring up the app. Obviously, it's all pretty seamless.
Did you have to enter your live information for just Windows 8, or did you have to do that as well for Office 15 to save to your SkyDrive?
You didn't have to enter it because you've already done it as part of logging into Windows 8. And I've not installed this OS on other. I'm sorry, I've not installed this suite on other operating systems. I would imagine in Windows 7 you would have to log in, as you do say in OneNote. If you saved OneNote notebooks to SkyDrive today, you just have to log in through a little dialog box. But this is all integrated under the covers, and it does work with that.
Well, it's definitely interesting. I'm kind of curious when there will be, I guess, a more open preview. Do we have any information about when that'll happen, or are we going to see this locked down like it has been?
No, that's going to be this summer. Sometime is the open beta for. It's not just for the client. It's for Office 15 client, the servers, so SharePoint, Exchange, and Lync. And also for the next version of Office 365 apps, all at the same time, an open preview.
Yep.
Shall we move on to Windows 8 consumer preview, or is there any more things about 15 that we should cover? Listen to that. That's the silence is deafening. Okay, so it's week 3 of consumer preview, and we're going to try some experiments actually before we start the actual segment here. What I have on my desk here is Windows 8 consumer preview. Now, there's a video floating around the web showing somebody trying to use Windows 8 and running into difficulty. Now, I'm somewhat of a tech person. You guys might agree with me there. And Alex has loaned me his Windows 8 machine. Now, I have not used Windows 8, but I have been using Windows for a really long time. So let's see how this goes. We're going to boot into this. And right away, we see Alex and John, because I believe that's his wallpaper. Okay.
Is it me, or does Alex look like the Sherlock Holmes character from Sherlock?
Yeah, a little bit. Okay. Actually, this is a very interesting shot. We're learning a lot about Microsoft that way. Let's see if I want to do anything. What do? I hit start, and it... Okay. Here's the first thing. I'm not messing. This isn't like a gag. I'm trying to use this thing for the first time. So let's see what happens. I need live tech support here. Where's my account? Hit back? Oh, there it is.
Obviously.
I'm looking for a button like an idiot. Everyone, please take a look at my password, which will be there. Okay, gonna sign in. Hit back. Like, I don't know why I wouldn't even think of that.
You used to have to hit start to shut down the computer. Why would that be illogical?
Well, that's a good point. Let's see. It's preparing Windows. Let's see. Is this going to work well? Do you guys have anything to say while this is preparing Windows for me? Because apparently it's never done that before. It's
done what?
It's never prepared Windows for me before, so it's just...
Well, this is the first time you've logged in, right?
On this machine.
Yeah, so that's why. I mean, if you logged in with a Windows Live ID, it's going to synchronize your settings and whatnot, behind the scenes. So there'll be some of that going on.
I need to get my hands on this dual interface thing. I've been covering it for so long, and I haven't been able to play with it just yet because, well, I'm too cheap to get a VM. Here we go. Okay, we have tiles. Okay, well, what do I want to do? I don't know. What do people do? Internet Explorer. And it's loading. Okay, well, that's simple enough. And what if I want to do something else? Hit start. I want to listen to music.
So what's the first thing you notice about the start button now? Actually, it's probably not the first thing you noticed. In other words, use the start button to go back to the start screen, right?
Yeah, I've been using that to just... I was like, okay, what would you do normally? If I was in an application, it's full screen, and I can't see the start menu like I normally do, I would just hit start, and then I get the tile screen, which makes sense to me.
One of the big differences, though, between Windows 8 and its predecessors, aside from the fact that screen is taking up the whole screen, it's not just a menu, is that it actually works as a toggle. So you can go back and forth using that button. So if you hit the start button now, and now hit it again.
So it's almost like an app switcher. Well, not an app switcher so much as the last application.
Right.
Because I have multiple things open.
Yeah, that's actually pretty helpful.
And Alt Tab shows up and Start Tab. Oh, Start Tab looks like this now instead of it being that desktop arrow-looking thing.
Yeah, Windows Flip 3D. Yep.
Okay. And there's a beta fish. Okay, that's great. Now what if I want to do something else? How can I get myself to the desktop and get lost? Desktop. Okay, there it is. Hit start, goes back there. This is not that difficult. I don't quite get why people are freaking out about this. Now, I don't like that in the corner. I got to say, that's hideous. I'm at where the start button was. I don't want to see that.
Well, except for one thing. So once you get used to that, the one thing to sort of note about that behavior is that obviously it's different. But it sort of you sort of go there as like a muscle memory type thing. Like, the start button used to be there, so you kind of move down there and then something happens. That's a clue maybe that doing the same in the other corners will also do something. And for the mouse, that's what they're doing, is they're exposing system-wide functionality in the corners. So they use these hot corners for mouse users.
I really, actually, when I slid my finger up on the trackpad and it gave you this actual task switcher, that's kind of neat. Like, that makes sense to me. Okay, but I wouldn't see any indication to do that when I slid over in the first place.
Well, actually, so there is a vague indication. If you move that back down to the corner, if you look, leave it there for a second.
Okay.
Up next to the recycle bin and then below, there are these little vague outlines that mean there's something there.
That is subtle.
It's extremely subtle, yeah.
Because the other thing is, if you go the wrong way, if I go this way, it's gone, right?
It's gone. Yep.
Okay, well, that's not so confusing. Let me open up Internet Explorer here. I mean, the weird thing is, I don't know what the real audience is for this anymore. Like, is it for people like me that know Windows and are willing to work with it, or is it for people like new users completely who just go, look, I don't know what this is. I'm looking at the tablet interface normally, and sometimes I might want to look at something where I'm actually using a desktop because it's.
Well, no, I think ultimately, though, for you on a laptop, using a regular laptop, there's no touch capabilities. I mean, you're going to screw around in that little start screen thing, but the truth is most of the time you're going to be sitting there on the desktop. I can tell you that after 3 weeks plus or whatever it's been of using a consumer preview with actual Metro-style apps to use on a big desktop computer, I use the desktop. It's just the way it is. I mean, I think that when you're holding a computer just like an iPad, you're holding a tablet that's like an iPad, you're going to stick in that Metro interface. Your thumbs are going to be on the sides of the screen where those edge UIs are really easy to trigger. And you'll use Metro apps because those are fun and simple and they're touch-friendly. But when you dock that thing or use a regular computer, you're going to use the desktop. And I just, we're confused about this stuff because it's new and we want to use it. But the truth is, this is essentially two different systems with some kind of tendrils between them so you can interact in some ways. But really, you're going to use one or the other based on the kind of computer you're using or the type of thing you're doing. And it's not as confusing as people are complaining it is, but it is absolutely confusing. And there's no doubt about it. It's got two personalities.
The other thing is looking at the start screen directly. The thing is, desktop is all the way on the right side and the second set of tiles.
You can move that.
Can you? But by default, it's over here in the corner. So like
in the consumer preview it is. It was actually in a different place in the developer preview. I mean, who knows? They might. Well,
I'm just kind of curious if they are relegating the desktop to like, okay, look, this isn't something you even want to see up front. You want to see the store. You want to see IE up front, mail.
I think what they're doing is highlighting the apps they added for the consumer preview. So they have these app previews. They've got mail and calendar and people and photos and camera and whatever else. And I think they want people to see that. So they put those things right up front. The other thing to remember is that all of the keyboard shortcuts that for the most part, work. So if you want to go, if you get to the desktop, you get to the start screen and you want to get to the desktop.
Yep.
Windows key plus D.
Nice.
It's exactly the same.
And they didn't get rid of run, which is really important to me.
Windows key plus R still works.
That still works.
Windows key plus C will bring up those charms, the things on the side. Well, that's not it. Actually, that's not
which thing? How do you bring up the charms in the desktop?
Windows key plus C.
Plus C. Okay, but can you just hover over there? No.
Yeah, so remember you use the Edge UI to do the start menu thing. So it's the same thing on the other side.
Start
you can
on the
go
bottom, though. There we go.
Right.
Huh.
Right.
That definitely seems touch first, not mouse-centric at all. But then again, you wouldn't bother with that. You have a keyboard. Why would you?
Right. Well, yeah, I was talking to some... Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, I don't use keyboard shortcuts. I have never used the Windows key in all of the years I've used a Windows machine. I can even look at mine on my laptop.
That's impossible. How did you do that?
Mine is covered with dust. I'm looking at it right now. The Windows key is covered with dust. And the reason I don't is I only use a mouse. And I think there are a lot of people like me. And I think we're the ones who are going to have the most trouble with Windows 8 because it's good if you know keyboard shortcuts. And it's good if you've got a touch device. And it's not really great if you're a mouse-centric user, which is what I am.
If you're using a single screen device, which obviously you are, I mean, and most people are, kind of like throwing the mouse cursor to the corner of the screen is not that hard, right? I mean, because it stops.
No.
It's a little harder in a multi-screen type of situation, although arguably those people are power users anyway. But, in Windows 7, there was a feature called, and it's still there, it's called Arrow Snap, right? Arrow snap, you can drag the window over to the side and it snaps to the side. If you're on a multi-screen and you're dragging it toward the screen that kind of buffets up against the other one, that mouse dragging behavior no longer works. It just doesn't work. You can't use arrow snap that way. But the keyboard shortcut for arrow snap, which is the Windows key plus right or left arrow, always works. So in a multi-screen environment, that still works. And I think that's sort of the answer. You know, they use the corners because they're really easy to hit with a mouse. But yeah, you know, if you're in a you have dual screens or 3 screens or whatever, you know, getting the little cursor right into that little area, yeah, it requires a little bit of precision. But we're kind of talking about a power user by that point.
Okay, this is I could see why people are going, this is bizarre. This is very weird to use because it seems like it's trying to do a lot of things. And basically, I'm just giving it a go. But if I was using this normally, I'm like, okay, look, I have a tablet with Windows 8. It's you're going to know what to do. You know, I'm going to go to the browser. It's going
okay. So just 2 random thoughts about this. When we went from DOS to Windows, you could bring up a DOS command line. You could run DOS apps in Windows inside of Windows. I'm sure people back then were like, "Whoa, what's this? This is crazy." The other one is if a lot of people, we sort of don't give people enough credit for how well they can actually adapt. One of the things that Microsoft has done over the years with absolutely zero research behind it was this notion that we'll create Microsoft Office apps in such a way that they will have the same toolbars as much as is possible and the same menu layouts so that people who use Word could then pick up Excel. And the theory is they'll be able to do it very easily because they work exactly the same, But one of the things that you discover when people do things like use a Windows computer their whole life and then switch to a Mac or start using an iPad is that those things don't work exactly the same, and yet they're able to adapt. And I think that going from Windows 7 to Windows 8 would be a lot easier than going from Windows 7 to a Mac because, again, all of the mouse actions, the keyboard shortcuts, all this stuff works exactly the same, even though it's not a menu, it's a screen, and shutdowns in a different place and all that. Shutdowns in a different place on the Mac, too. I didn't hear anyone asking Apple to make a start button with a shutdown inside of it so that behavior would be easier on that system. But that's one of the number one complaints that you hear from Windows users about Windows 8. I mean, it's a little ludicrous, frankly.
When I first started,
I think the real question to ask more than, is it going to be harder to go from Windows to Mac or Windows 7 to 8 is it easier just to stay with Windows 7 or Windows Vista and not go to Windows 8, right? Because I'm just thinking, it was funny. I was talking to Chris Perillo on Twitter last night because he's posted up this video of his dad trying to use Windows 8 for the first time. And he said, why didn't you weigh in? What do you think? And I said, all I could think was, if your dad was my mom, I would be getting endless phone calls because I think normal people, it's not going to be as quick as it is for everybody else who's doing testing with the consumer preview. It's, my mom uses a PC, 3-4 times a week. Every time she forgets what she did the last time, and she calls me and said, how did I do that again? And I'm like, oh man, if I ever put her on Windows 8, it's going to be a support nightmare. Total support nightmare.
Sure. I think there's something to be said for the notion that Windows 8 is also a 1.0 version of this thing, which I'll just call Metro to make it easy. And that, by definition, this stuff is going to be evolved over time. It's going to get better. It's going to get better for different classes of people. I mean, right now, I would say, as it's going to ship, Windows 8, Metro-wise, is not a great configuration for power users. It just isn't. Then maybe that stuff will get better by Windows 9, or hopefully it won't take Windows 9. It will be something that happens in the interim. But yeah, definitely. I mean, I think there's going to be a whole class of users that, stick with Windows 7 with what they know as a result of that. But remember, we're going after kind of a more mainstream type audience. I mean, a lot of people, like my mother, for example, if she didn't have vision problems, would be an ideal candidate for an iPad because it's super simple and it does just, the things that she wants to do. A little bit of email, a little bit of web browsing, a little bit of Facebook, whatever. A Windows 8 tablet would serve that need very nicely too. And oh, by the way, there's this desktop in the background. And if you do want to use some old, whatever Kodak application you use for photos or something, that will still work. And I think for a lot of people, that will be very interesting and will make that valuable as a result as well.
Before we talk a little bit more about Windows 8 and a whole lot more things like Windows Phone 8 and Google changing everything to look like Bing, let's thank a sponsor with Go to My PC. Windows Weekly is brought to you by Go to My PC. Now, more and more business people are working remotely from their iPads and their iPhones, leaving their laptops behind, and they're working a lot lighter. But an iPad and iPhone, they just can't replace your office computer. That is, unless you have Go to My PC, the application. It's the missing link. It turns your iPad and iPhone into your computer, okay? With Go to My PC by Citrix, you can access your entire Mac or PC, work on any program, save, edit, send any file from anywhere. Go to My PC is convenient, reliable, and easy to use. It sets up in just minutes. So just imagine, let's say somebody's trying out a new machine and they have no idea where anything is because nothing is named. You can't say, go to the menu bar or whatever is going on there. You can use something like Go to My PC. While on the go, you can take care of any kind of urgent request to edit a PowerPoint, update a spreadsheet, print out a document, or even work on any files right from your iPhone. So you don't have to even worry. Is there an app for that? Yeah, it's called Go to My PC. The Go to My PC apps are a lifesaver when you're away from the office. You literally have access to your entire computer right in your pocket, unless it's an iPad, then maybe you have a really large pocket. Try Go to My PC today with a special 30-day free trial offer. Visit gotomypc.com and click the Try It Free button, then enter promo code WINDOWS, then download the free Go to My PC app to try out on iPad or iPhone. That's gotomypc.com. Try it for free with the promo code Windows. We thank Citrix and Go to My PC for their support of Windows Weekly. Now, does Microsoft have a plan B if everything goes wrong with Windows 8?
Windows Phone.
I know. Everybody laughs when you say this, but people are asking questions that make you wonder, okay, is there any hope at all as far as, people fighting this? There was a guy who launched this site who used to work at Microsoft called fixingwindows8.com this week. It's an online petition. It's been down all week, by the way. That tells you something right there. But, he's saying, Windows 8, not good the way it is. Microsoft's going to change the UI. It's not working, this dual user interface thing. And again, Paul and I have talked about this on previous episodes, but this isn't going to change a whole lot, everybody. If there's endless outcry about the dual user interface, about no start button, you don't like this, you don't like that, it's not going to change. I mean, this is the consumer preview, and it's almost done. I mean, they're going to still make some tweaks, right? But I just think people have really, really unrealistic expectations about what's going to be done. I mean, I'm seeing people put out these long laundry lists of things they expect Microsoft is going to change between now and RTM. No, they're not. I can't say it definitively, but I mean,
no, but you're right, and that's been my stance. I mean, I think a lot of people have misunderstood my stance on this stuff because that's what I've been really saying. In other words, people are like, oh, you like Windows 8 as it is. No one likes it like you do. I mean, that has almost nothing to do with it. I actually am confused by it. I mean, I like everyone else, I don't think that this thing is irrational in some ways. I mean, but what Mary Jo is saying is absolutely right, and that's been my point. Is you can bitch and moan all you want about the shutdown button being in a different place, so there's no start button or start menu or whatever, but I got bad news for you. It's not changing. So let's move on to a more fruitful conversation because, I think the conversation at this point has to be like, look, it is the way it is. So, I mean, how can we best make use of what we have and be efficient using this system and that kind of thing? And that's why I've tried to focus on the stuff that I've been focusing on, not on, here's a way you can make it work like Windows 7. I mean, we have this conversation over and over again. When Windows 95 came around, people replaced the desktop with the program manager, for crying out loud. When the new start menu debuted in Windows XP, people put the old start menu back. When they took that old start menu out of Windows, I don't know if it was 7 or Vista, someone wrote a utility that would bring it back. People kind of get stuck in their old way of doing things. And okay, that's fine. But I think we need to be realistic in our expectations, like she said, and I think that we need to have a conversation about some of the things that could happen. For example, in the notes, Mary Jo wrote that some people think that Microsoft might make the desktop the default on PCs and Metro the default on tablets, and she doesn't believe that that's going to happen, and I don't either. But I think there's a possibility that could happen for businesses. And what that means is that if they do enable something like that, and we can see this, the possible group policies that could make that happen, that means that normal people can make it happen too if they really wanted to. Using some kind of a registry hack or whatever it is, or just changing local policy. You boot into that start screen the first time. It's a little confusing on a desktop computer or a laptop. But like I said, Windows key plus D. It's very quick, and I realize it's kind of not what you're looking for, but it's not. It's really not hard to do. We develop little computing traditions, as we use these things, and it's painful to change, of course, but it's also not hard to adapt new ways of doing things. So, I
think the real thing to watch is what is Microsoft going to do, and what a partner is going to do too, to make it more intuitive for people when they buy a new PC to open the box, take it out, and then you can figure out how to use Windows 8. Because right now there's no special help, there's no kind of tutorials or booklets or anything. It's like people are just being thrown out there. Here, figure this out. And I think if they have something that's like, when you first turn it on, there's a very in-depth tutorial or something like that, or something you can have like as a reference guide, whatever. I think that'll help a lot. But that's something we don't know because we're not at that point yet of knowing how they're going to promote it and package it and all that, right?
If only they would bundle my book in the OS.
I know, wouldn't that be awesome for you?
Just like $1 a copy.
So
yeah, the other analogy that I keep bringing up to people is I always say, remember, this is exactly what happened with the ribbon in Office, right? And it's, in fact, even the same team that brought you the ribbon in Office. It's Steven Sinofsky and Julie Larson-Green. And remember how much people hated the ribbon in Office at the beginning? I mean, there were petitions. People were saying, that's it, I'm not buying it. I hate the ribbon, not doing it.
Now, by the way, just because you've raised this issue, you are going to get emails from people who are going to tell you, I still hate the ribbon.
There it is in the chat room.
But you will get them from people who say, no, I still hate the ribbon. And
I get that all the time still.
But of course. But I just want to be fair about the ribbon because, in the same way that the file structure you create for a file system for a floppy disk suddenly becomes untenable when you have hard drive. The management system that you created, menus and toolbars, for very simple applications, becomes untenable when you have huge Office apps with hundreds and hundreds of commands. So, I'm sorry, but the ribbon has helped me find commands I didn't even know were in there or were very hard to find before. And that's, we can bicker over little things, but I think the ribbon has proven itself to be very successful, actually. For all the
I hate the ribbon. One of the haters. And you know why? And it's interesting why I don't like the ribbon, because I don't use Office a lot either. I've mentioned on the show before, I don't really have occasion. I never use Excel pretty much, and very seldom use PowerPoint. So whenever I go back to Office after not having used it for like weeks and need to do something, the ribbon is just like, okay, this is as confusing as having all those commands buried to me. So, I think, for people who use products all the time and get, accustomed to where things are and how to use them, these things are great. And if you're somebody who's more of an occasional user, either of Windows or Office or both, it's going to be more confusing for you.
All right, so let's try a little experiment and see how long it takes Iyaz to shut down or reboot the computer.
Shut down, because I'm going to go to the start menu.
But hold on a second. But that, by the way, so unfortunately, what you've just described is something that people don't actually do that much.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, because I'm looking
in other words, you've used a laptop before, right? You might use a Mac, you might use Windows, whatever. But the truth is, when you're done computing or whatever, what do you do with the laptop?
You close it.
Right. That's it. And guess what? That hasn't changed in Windows 8. It works exactly the same way. It's just really fast now.
Okay, so if I wanted to shut down, though, I want to see how to do that.
Yeah, let's see you do it.
I'm looking at we're at the start screen. I'm looking for something to give me an option. I'm thinking here maybe I sign out, and then maybe an option comes up.
Actually, an option will come up.
So hang on, let's see. Well, if it does come up, then here we go. Sign out anyway. Yeah, go ahead. My untitled Notepad document is going to be lost, though, which said I was psyched that Notepad is still there.
Who isn't?
Let's see. How do I?
Okay. Oh, actually, that's interesting. You went back to
I don't see anything there. But, it's probably because Alex is still logged in or something.
Yeah, so why did the background change?
So what I'll do is just hit the power button.
On the lock screen.
Yeah, the lock screen changed.
Did it just...
Probably because he logged in, and that's the default lock screen.
You probably want to go back to some video, though, because they're probably freaking out.
It went black.
Yeah, because I actually hit the power button and it went to sleep.
So I'm going to sign out of mine, because I noticed this earlier today.
The image is saved in the public pictures folder, so it should be available to everyone.
That image is, yep.
Well, I mean the one that I had before.
How did I even log in?
All right, so by the way, there is a power option. So it's a lock screen, but if you were to dismiss the lock screen by hitting any key.
Hitting keys. There we go.
Now, wait. Oh, well, hold on.
Go back.
There's a power button.
Oh, there
right
it
in the
is.
corner. So
Okay.
you can do it that way
I see. Okay.
if you want to.
So the other thing is, it looks like Microsoft is saying what you were saying, Paul, that they are not worried about you shutting it down. It'll restart when they give you an update to say, hey, you might restart it now. But otherwise, your use case scenario is going to be that. That's your use case scenario.
Absolutely, it is. Of course, it is. Now, of course, when I say things like that, I get emails from people saying, you don't understand. In the company I work for, we have these really old computers, and it's really inefficient electricity-wise to have these things running all night. To which I would say, of course, then you shouldn't be running Windows 8 to begin with, whatever. But if your job entails you as the last thing that you do every single day, turning off your computer, I'm going to go out on a limb and suggest that you will find a very efficient way to do that, and that someone in your office will circulate an email when they say, look, I found this way to do it really fast. You know, that's the type of tip that workers share with each other. I mean, I would tell you that it's actually very easy to shut down in Windows 8, but of course, when you already know how to do it, of course it's easy. So that's a little bit unfair. But the people who figure this stuff out will share it with others in such a situation.
You yank out the cable.
You yank out the cable, yes. And by the way, that's not a bad thing to do in Windows 8, because in Windows 7, you get that annoying menu at the beginning that says, do you want to start Windows normally because something bad happened? And they don't really do that in Windows 8. So you could yank the cable, and that would actually work.
You don't get the safe mode with no networking or anything? You don't get that option?
Not by default.
Oh.
I know. Everyone loves that.
Everyone likes to see that and freak out. What does it mean? What does it mean? And then there's a timer on the top, and people are like, why
I would
is
like
it
to
counting
start
down?
Windows abnormally. Is that a choice?
Okay, so we got that. Oh, there's been some news about web browsing on Windows 8. Mozilla is working on its version of Firefox, and it has a Metro version. Google's working on their version of Chrome. In the Mozilla post, though, there was a discussion of how to have the Metro version of Firefox or the Metro version of Google Chrome, you have to set it as your default browser. Otherwise, you only get the desktop versions. Is that really the way it's going to be at the end of the day? You can't just have multiple Metro?
So it is. And it's weird because I had just I wrote the chapter about Internet Explorer for the book. And one of the weird behaviors about IE that is true of any Metro browser is that if you set your default browser to be any other browser, the Metro browser disappears. It's not available anymore. So, for example, if you were to, let's say you had a Windows 7 PC and you set Chrome to be your default browser, and then you upgraded it to Windows 8. And so the start screen comes up, and there will be a tile on the on the Windows 8 start screen for Internet Explorer. But when you click on it or tap it or whatever, it will launch the desktop version of the browser, not the Metro version, because the Metro version is not available because you set Chrome as your default browser. So this is again, I can only speculate, and the reason is they've never returned my calls about this, and I'm very upset about that. But my speculation is that because Metro is a sandboxed, highly protected environment, once you start doing that with default browser, what the activities that a browser can do. In other words, you're in another application, you click on a hyperlink. What happens? They don't want a way for another application to inject code into the Metro environment, and so they're just shutting it down. In other words, if you've decided that you're using another browser, the Metro browser goes away. Now, in today's Windows 8, we don't have another Metro browser to test, but based on what I've seen with IE Metro and based on some Microsoft documentation that has come public and based on what Mozilla has been saying, so in other words, you'd say, I want Metro Firefox to be my default browser. I believe that Metro IE would go away at that point.
So with Metro Firefox or Metro Google Chrome, Mozilla's been saying with Firefox that it'll be just as full features as their desktop. Is that even possible, or is it just going to bounce you back to the desktop?
That's absolutely not possible.
Still not possible. Because I was noticing this as I was messing with Windows 8, that the Metro browser of IE is not in sync with the desktop one. So I can have...
Well, in sync in what way?
If I'm opening up Bing in the Metro version, and then I for some reason wanted to see something with not Flash content. If I wanted to go over to the desktop and I open up IE...
You should try to find something with Flash content.
Okay, let's try that.
YouTube is a bad example because YouTube does HTML5 rendering, but what would be a good Flash website?
Justin TV is all Flash, and it drives me crazy.
Justin TV, is it?
Let's try that. I'm going to use my keyboard shortcuts of Control L.
Is it like Justin.tv?
Yep. I need Flash. Okay.
Yeah. Download it from Adobe. Now, this is one of those beautiful, unbelievably confusing and stupid things in Windows 8.
Okay.
If you click download it from Adobe.
Going to click that.
And you click download now.
You're not getting the video? Okay. I'm going to download now.
And then you can run it.
Your download
and
will
then
start.
it will download and run.
I don't know where it's going, though.
Right. Well, it doesn't matter because actually it will prompt you to run it. That's one of the excellent new features of IE Metro. You don't have to worry about where it goes.
Oh, there it is. I don't need to worry where my downloaded files are going?
Right. Okay. It's the same place it went before, but you don't have to think about it. Mine's taking forever to download. Here it goes. So here's the thing. It will go to the desktop. The installer will run. You'll install Flash. And you go back to IE, and it still won't work. It will actually still prompt you to go download it again. It's confusing.
So wait, it doesn't just bounce you out?
Well, no, because right, and I'm not actually. I don't mean to say because. No, it will. Let me just. I want to make sure. I did this a little early. I just want to make sure it does exactly the same thing.
It's running a security scan now. That's help. Yeah. That's helpful.
Yep. That's also.
Oh wait! Something happened. It's giving your. I'm not an admin. I cannot change this computer. So let's not even do that now. But
I wouldn't trust. Well, let me just do it here.
Do you trust Adobe? No.
I do, very much so. The problem is what you get is a desktop style installer, of course, because it's like this desktop app, and it does install Flash onto your system, which I am doing right now. And then you click done. Eventually, you click done, and Flash does not install into the browser because that browser doesn't support add-ons.
It doesn't support it, exactly. So why would...
No, you have installed it into IE, which is odd because I believe the desktop version of IE actually already has it, but whatever. So if you go back to, go back to the Metro, and I guess go back to Justin TV. We'd have to type it in again, which is annoying. And then you go back to that website. So you've installed Flash like you were asked.
Let's go back to Justin TV.
God, I'm having a... And it says, you need Adobe Flash to watch this video. Download it from Adobe.
It's a good idea. Let's do that again.
Hey, click it again.
I like
this.
You
see what happens. You see what happens.
But then aren't you left wondering why this isn't working? But then it's actually available in IE desktop.
It is actually working right now. If you were to go to Justin TV in the desktop version of IE. Mm-hmm. All right, so two things. Manually, from Justin TV, for example, go back in the browser, go back to Justin TV in IE Metro.
Go into IE Metro.
It's dumb that this doesn't work automatically.
Okay.
Hit back.
Hit back.
There's an icon. Go back.
There are things flying by. Back to what?
Go back to Justin TV.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Okay.
It's a very special episode of Windows Weekly where we're trying to figure out how this is supposed to work.
There's a button in the navigation bar that has a little wrench on it. And if you tap that, one of the choices is view on the desktop. And if you do that,
then that's how it kind of syncs. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Aha. Okay.
That's not a great experience because you just followed the instructions on the screen.
Yeah.
And you thought you did the right thing, and you went back to the site, and it still didn't work. And that's the type of thing where I think it would be nice if there was some kind of a useful and automatic handoff.
It just seems like when you're prompted to install something like a plugin for a web browser, I'm sure they could be identified somehow by Microsoft that it immediately would have an automatic transition to just bring you over.
That would be very logical. This is one of the questions I'm waiting to ask of the IE team if they would ever return my phone call.
Do you think that the other versions of the browsers could do a better job? Could Google or Mozilla be able to automatically?
Yeah, and I think it's also likely that Microsoft itself will do a better job by the time this thing's actually released. But the experience as it is today is just not. It's not fantastic.
Isn't one of them? Is it Mozilla or Google? Is saying they want to try to experiment with plugins in Metro, like somehow trick Metro to use plugins. Like write them in a way that it's going to be permissible. I don't see how that can work, actually. But
no, I don't. I think it was not particularly bright of them to announce that ahead of time either.
We're going to trick Microsoft.
Are they going to run a browser in a browser? They could do that.
I think it was encapsulating plugins in some way that it didn't.
It didn't violate the Metro, containers. Sure. One of the browser makers, I don't really follow this anymore, but maybe it's I don't know if it's Mozilla or Chrome, but they use sort of an HTML5 based system now, I think, right, for extensions anyway. So you could kind of argue that if, depending on how this thing was created, maybe that would be possible. But it's kind of all or nothing.
Yeah, the other reason for that limitation in the browser is, if you have something other than IE as the default, isn't that also have to do with contracts in Windows 8? I thought I read something about that too, like just like you're talking about. Like there's no.
I'm sorry. I don't think so. I mean, I'm trying.
What was that weird sound?
It was the bat. It was
bats are back.
The colony of bats, as we say. I don't think so. I mean, I find the whole interaction of web browsers and stuff to be confusing, like a lot of things in Windows 8. I mean, I think IE in many ways is the poster child for the problem that people are going to have with Windows 8 because it too has this weird two-headed experience. Sometimes, it's weird. I think that the people who are going to use this Metro environment exclusively, tablet users, aren't going to be installing desktop browsers anyway, so that won't raise its ugly head. And then if they want to install their own Metro-style browser, I mean, that's fine too, obviously. But I mean, as far as contracts go, if you think about the types of contracts, like a search contract or a share contract, a browser is any app, any Metro-style app, it's kind of a one-way transaction. It doesn't matter. I mean, it's a system-wide capability. So you could share a web page out from the browser. You could perform an internet search, which is, using the search contract. Apps can search just like you can search the OS or the file system or whatever. So interaction with devices is the same. If you want to print or project the display to a second screen, I mean, that's a system-wide capability that's open to all apps. So I don't think so. I don't see any reason why that would be an issue.
I think one of the big things about Windows 8 is that what people are going to find when they first do this, they're going to go to the store first to get applications for things they're used to. They're not going to worry about the plugin for something like Justin TV or the plugin for Hulu or any of that stuff. They're just going to go for the app. They're not going to really even think about it as, I go through my browser anymore because it's got that totally different feel to it. You're going to go, I'm going to hit store first. I'm going to go find, the Zune app or whatever.
Actually, you just raised an interesting point. I mean, we're talking about Justin TV. So what's the problem with that website, right? Is it that IE Metro is broken, or is it that Justin TV doesn't offer a modern and elegant way of handling it when you don't have Flash? In other words, could they re-architect the site to detect the features of the browser and then give you an HTML5 video version of the site instead of Flash? Yes, they could. And potentially by the time that Windows 8 ships, they will. And people who visit that site or other sites today that use Flash maybe won't even see that because, these websites will have been modernized by then.
Well, I think we've beaten up Windows 8 plenty. And look, the other thing is it's really stable. It's just that the user here is just kind of like, okay, it's going to take a little time to get used to. I mean, there's just some differences there. So I just think I'm hoping that this is going to get a little bit more polished. Apart from that, I think it's actually going to be fine. I really do think so because I think they're going to target new users, and new users aren't coming in with the experience of it doesn't work the way it used to. They're going to say, I'm just going to push this button. Let's move on.
Some of them are going to say, I'm glad it doesn't work the way it used to.
That's very true.
True.
So
Windows Phone 8, Tango has been renamed. What have we got now? Is it really called Refresh?
Yeah, well, that's what we heard. I mean, again, in the concept of we really don't know. There's been some weird moving around of the names, right? I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. In fact, I fully expect when this thing comes out, we can look at it, that the version number essentially is going to be like 7.5.1 something. I mean, the SDK version is 7.1.1, whereas Mango was 7.1. So, refresh works. Apple would have called it like Windows Phone 7.5S, or whatever.
So you don't think it's going to be 7.5.1 now? You just think it's going to be refresh with no version number?
I think that's what they're going to call it. In other words, you know how there's like the internal name, that's the real name. We talk about names. I mean, names are important. Like they always talk about Mango. It's 7.5, right? I think that Refresh is the name, and they're trying to tie it into Mango. Like it's just a little thing that tacks on to Mango, which it probably is. And then the version number will betray its actual importance. I guess 7.5.1 perhaps 7.6 whatever. I mean, it's going to be something like that.
Well, did the name come with any other features? It's the exact same thing. It just has a new label.
This is Mary Jo's area of expertise, if I'm not mistaken. I think.
Well, yeah. So what's really confusing to me still, and I think to some other people as well, perhaps, is there's two Tangos, we think, or refreshes.
It does take two to tango. You are right about that.
Yeah. So one is the operating system that's going to be installed on new phones. Like in China right now, Windows phones are launching. There's the HTC Titan that just launched in China, and I think ZTE is about to launch the Orbit there, and both of those run Tango. So they run whatever this thing is, Windows 7.5 refresh. But then people like us who already have Windows phones, we're going to get a refresh also of our phones. That'll be some kind of an update that's pushed down to us sometime in the coming months. And we're just going to get some new features added to our phones, but we're not going to get the whole operating system that's been redone to work on lower power phones. So there's really two things, and it'll be curious if they call these both Windows Phone 7.5 refresh, because they're two kind of different things. One is a whole brand new operating system customized for lower power phones. One is just a bunch of feature updates for people who already have Mango. Isn't that confusing?
A little bit. I mean,
I still have a disappointing keyboard. I mean, I'd be happy to get,
so do I.
2 updates ago or something. It's just kind of a weird situation.
I know, yeah. I mean, and the part we still know nothing about, of course, is Apollo, which is Windows Phone OS 8 coming later this year. And that's the other one, or is that going to go on existing phones? Is it only going to go on Mango and later handsets, handsets that first shipped with Mango, or second generation Windows phones, whatever you want to call them? Or is that going to go to everybody? And some of the features won't work. Say you don't have a front-facing camera, but Windows Phone OS 8 is supposed to have support for that. So you just won't have it, but you'll get the OS update anyways. There's kind of conflicting opinions on that. I forget which site talked to somebody supposedly at Mobile World Congress, and they said every phone is going to get it. Every Windows phone is going to get Windows Phone OS 8, which I don't know. I mean, they just said it in an offhand way to them. So Microsoft won't comment on that. We don't know.
Am I getting less nerdy, or is Microsoft just getting more confusing by year? Because I remember I used to read this stuff when I was a kid in magazines and things. Maybe it was because I couldn't have the same amount of access I have now to content and information. It just seems like I have no idea.
To paraphrase what you just said, it's like dealing with Microsoft is like watching a grandfather succumb to Alzheimer's. Like they're like less and less coherent as time goes by. I mean, we've been talking about this for 2 years with Windows Phone, and then Windows 8, unfortunately, is kind of the same thing. I mean, there's some brilliant stuff occurring there. I don't feel like they're very clear about it at all, and I don't understand why you would be that way. I mean, I don't understand. It makes no sense at all.
Clearing up confusion isn't good. Bad.
No, right. Clearing up confusion is always good. I mean, even if it was to make a statement where they say, hey, look, clearly we are working on the next major version of Windows Phone. We're really excited about it. It's going to have hundreds of new features. We're not ready to talk about it yet. We'll come back in a few months. Even something like that would be preferable to the cricket sound that I hear right now. It's like they just don't have a response to anything, and it's weird. I mean, I just don't get it, and I don't agree with it. I don't. It's never the right thing to not be clear.
Yeah.
You know what's
not
clear and not confusing at all is one of our sponsors, Hover.com. I got to say, these guys are great. Hover is all about making domain registration really, really simple. Okay, they don't sell you tons of services. This isn't. I'm not going to knock any things we're talking about. They focus on making it easy to register and manage domains and email. Now they have something called a no hold policy for customer service calls Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 8 p.m. Eastern. So let's say you have a concern. You're like, I don't really know how something's working. You can give them a phone call, and get this, you're going to get a live person directly. There's no hold. There's no phone trees. Your wait time is 35 minutes, and someone will be with you shortly, and they might not understand what you're saying. You're going to get a real person right away. That will save you lots of time right there if you have any questions. Also, Hover has 2 new domain services premium domains, and clunker trade-ins. Here's how premium domains work at Hover. So if you're willing to pay a little bit more money for a URL that's kind of short and uses commonly used words, Hover offers premium domains. When you search for domains at Hover, domains that were previously purchased but available for sale come up in your search results. Now you have the opportunity to purchase domain names that are hard to get. These domain names can cost anywhere from, a few $100 to maybe a few $1,000s. Try a search today on hover.com and see what premium domains are available. And let's say you have a clunker domain. Let's say you bought something, you regret it. You're like, I really wanted to use this. There it is, iloveiyaz.com. I'm going to regret buying that one. So let's say I used it for years. Here's the deal. If I registered at Hover and I want to upgrade that domain, Hover will take that domain back. They will credit everything you've spent on your old clunker domain with Hover, the original registration fee and any renewal fees, and then you get all your money back. That's a fantastic kind of thing. You can try out Hover. You can visit Hover today at windows.hover.com. Use the offer code Windows. Again, these services are incredible. If you need a standard non-premium domain, use offer code Windows and get 10% off. Go to windows.hover.com and use the offer code Windows for 10% off. If you want to trade in a clunker or call customer service, you can do that. And check that out at hover.com. And we thank them for their sponsorship of Windows Weekly. On to Google ripping off Microsoft, apparently. There's news that Google is changing the way search is handled. When you search things on Google, they're going to give you a lot more results, maybe decisions, information up front, not just a bunch of blue links. People are starting to think that kind of seems like what Bing's been doing. Is it?
Well, it is what Bing's been doing, but as Mary Jo points out in the notes there, I mean, Google has certainly had little initiatives along those ways, but I think when you look at a Google search results page, I mean, they pride themselves in the sort of cold, analytical, mathematical, your search has returned 16,716,000, whatever search results. They love that stuff. And I think, honestly, the real impetus for this in a way is more likely the Siri stuff and the implications that this stuff can have on voice-based searching for devices and so forth, where, you're ultimately, when someone goes to a search engine and searches for something, they're asking a question. They want to find flight information between two cities on certain dates, so they want to find out what the capital of Ohio is, or they want to know information about some thing or place or person or whatever it is, and that there are intelligent ways that you can kind of surface that stuff at the top. So yeah, I mean, I think the real non-controversial version of the story is that all of these services are going to be moving in this direction, and that they sort of feed off of each other in many ways. To me, the funny part about this is simply that Google in the past has sort of poo-pooed what Bing was doing around what they call the decision engine stuff. Whereas, you can sort of say on the same line that, Bing went in that direction because they sort of realized that they were never going to really take on Google for pure search, that there was just no chance, that if they were going to play Google at their own game, they were never going to win that battle. So they went after these kind of, I don't want to call them niche searches, but targeted searches, I guess, would be the way to put it.
And this isn't the first time Google's... Go ahead.
No, I was going to say they've both been talking about, search is more than the 10 blue links for a while. And Bing's been definitely more serious about, trying to differentiate themselves there and really make it clear we're really already past the 10 blue links point. But Danny Sullivan kind of broke down the story today. It was a story in the Wall Street Journal that said Google was going to make this big change in their strategy and suddenly start doing these kind of searches. And Danny Sullivan went back and said, well, they already do this, and they already do this, they already do this. And his theory was kind of interesting. He said, I think it's just Google PR is trying to get any kind of good PR they can get at this point because of all the negative PR they've been getting around Search Plus Your World and Google Plus, and they just need to show like they're still like doing something that people find valuable and relevant. That was his whole post today, which was kind of interesting. It was like, yeah, they're already doing this, and the Wall Street Journal just kind of played into their hand and gave them PR on something they're already doing.
Didn't Google already copy Bing with like its left-hand navigation? Because Google didn't used to have that. When it came to, they only had navigation on top when it came to their searches. Then magically the stuff on the left showed up.
I think the way search works is just the way that operating systems work, that these guys copy from each other,
Yep.
I mean, It seems like every time Google comes out with a service, Microsoft copies it, and vice versa. That this is the way these guys do things, and I think there are good ideas to both of them. I mean, I honestly, I'm not a typical user in many ways, so I find Google's like sort of more Spartan approach to things preferable in some ways. But I also recognize that the way Bing works is probably something that a lot of people would like. I mean, it's got an attractive layout and an attractive way of presenting information and everything. I don't go on there and search for celebrity photos and stuff like that. I'm looking for like a screenshot or a box shot of some product, and I don't need it to have some beautiful screen, gallery look to it. But, for the people that want that stuff, I mean, I think certainly Microsoft's doing some good stuff there. All around pictures, nice.
I didn't realize
celebrity photos.
I didn't realize Google put up so many pictures when it came to.
I enjoy that Walter Mossberg is a picture of me.
Yeah, that's hilarious. You look just like him.
I will eventually.
We need to enlarge that shot, put a side by side up.
Yeah. He's the Darth Vader to my Luke.
Although I also put in the show notes today. I've been somebody who says I don't really use Bing as my default engine because I do, like Paul, I do a lot of queries more about products. I do a lot of code name queries. I do a lot of queries for stories that have been written on products. And I always would find Google was just turning up the results I wanted way more often than Bing was. But lately I've been trying Bing, and Bing is turning up better results now for me on my kinds of queries. So I have actually recently changed my default search in Chrome to Bing. And I've been much happier on my desktop search results lately. I can't say the same on my Windows Phone. I still use Google on Windows Phone more than I use Bing because a lot of times, what's crazy though? I'm looking for things in New York. I put it in, do a search for a local result. Nothing comes up in Bing. I look on Google, there it is. So I think they're a little further behind in the local search on Bing on mobile than they are on the desktops.
In Microsoft's defense, it must be really hard to find stuff to do in New York. So I don't see where you can find them.
It is tough. It's tough.
I love that you have Google on a Microsoft product with Windows Phone, and then you have Bing in Chrome. So you've balanced it out.
You corrupt everything you use.
Corruption is one way. I was thinking that was more of a balance. Like the universe is okay because both are abominations. They should not happen. But
I just use whatever is the best tool for the job. That's all.
Oh boy, that's just odd. And the other look, searches are going to keep changing anyway. I think for Google and Bing and Microsoft in this case, the reason why they're doing this different thing is to get different people to look at different things. And the other thing is you can't always trust the results you get. I mean, Google bombing is a real thing. There's a political candidate right now, presidential candidate. If you look up his name, a certain thing comes up, and maybe Google wants to control what people see right away. Same thing with Microsoft. You want to have some kind of control over what people are seeing, especially because they might identify it with you. Just because they're giving you the search results doesn't mean people aren't going to blame Microsoft or Google for what they're seeing. So, you want answers, you could pick all you want. Or you could always go to Alta Vista, which I don't know who powers them anymore. It might be monkeys? Yeah. I don't know. Does Alta Vista even in existence anymore?
I kind of hope it is monkeys. That's awesome.
Or Ask Jeeves, is that still around? I don't. This just feels like this horrible. Like, where are they now? Where is Metacrawler? I don't know.
That's right where it belongs.
Where it belongs. On to Office 365 price cuts for enterprise users. This, Mary Jo, I bet is all you.
Yes. It is. And this is really good news for anybody who is about to renew or buy a copy of Office 365. And so this is, I'm trying to think of an easy way to explain this. This is another one. Well, man, is there an easy way to explain this? So with Office 365, they have different price plans. There's P plans. Those are for small businesses. Then there's E plans and K plans. And those two are for enterprises. So all the cuts are in E and K. There are some cuts on different elements that are slightly more than 20%, some slightly under 20%. But Microsoft said effective as of yesterday, March 14th, there's roughly a 20% cut across the board for all of these enterprise plans. And it's going to be up to your partner, if you buy the product through a reseller, to pass those savings on to you. But if you buy directly from Microsoft, you're going to be able to get that new price right away. So, there's a lot of different theories why they're doing this right now. Some people believe it's because Office 365 is actually selling really well with small businesses, and it's selling less well to larger businesses, and that they're trying to stimulate among larger businesses, which I have to say, Microsoft's denying that that's the case, but that's one theory out there. But in any case, if you're anytime in the foreseeable future about to renew, you're going to get a lower price. So, things that used to be $10 per user per month, now $8. So it's a pretty good savings. The partners are a little worried that they're not going to recoup their losses because they feel like they kind of have to pass these savings on, and they're already feeling like they're being squeezed by Microsoft on margins on cloud. But they're going forward with that. And the other place they made a cut to, which is interesting if you're in academia, is in the thing they call the A2 plan. And the A2 plan is used to be just free for students, but cost something for faculty. And now they're making it free for everyone, students and faculty. So it was a pretty significant cut yesterday that they announced.
Did you cover the government edition? Or did I miss that? Yeah.
No. There's also there's word. It's still kind of vague at this point what they're going to do here, but it sounds like Microsoft's also going to do a version of Office 365 expressly for U.S. government customers. So they did this with the predecessor of Office 365 that was called BPOS. There used to be a BPOS F for federal, and it was a very much locked down version with all kinds of rules and all kinds of compliance requirements. They haven't introduced something comparable to that for the cloud yet with Office 365, but they posted something a week or so ago saying, we've got this government cloud thing coming, and we can't tell you when or anything more about it, but it's coming, so don't worry. So if you're in the government, something is coming to help you if you're an Office 365 user. Or hurt you if you don't like Office 365.
Do you think the government uses Microsoft so much because they're used to not getting clear answers? Because it seems about right.
I know, it fits right in, doesn't it? Yeah.
That's Microsoft in a nutshell. It seems like the past couple of years. Shall we go on to listener Q&A? Everyone excited about that? Everyone's excited. Or chat room, guys. Feel free to give us questions. We have a list right now. The question is there any news on SkyDrive for Windows 7?
Well, no. I mean, other than that, there'll be an app this year, right? So Microsoft previously announced that there would be a SkyDrive for desktop app that would work in Windows 8, Windows 7, and I think Windows Vista. And that's all we know. So, no, it hasn't happened yet, obviously, but sometime this year.
But it's going to exist. It's not like IE 10. That won't be supported on Windows 7, right?
Actually, I don't know about that. I would imagine it would be, actually.
It is. There is a version of IE 10 for Windows 7 that they haven't updated since last June. It's in Platform Preview 2 still, but it's coming, they say, and they won't say when or when it's going to be updated again. But there is one.
This is a softball question. Is Nokia building a Windows 8 tablet?
They haven't actually gone that far and said that. Although, there was a report that today, I think it was, quoting somebody from Nokia saying we're building a tablet.
Yeah, there's a design
chief. It was Windows 8.
Well, yeah.
Right. Didn't say it was Windows 8.
You really? Okay, wait a second. That's killer. Like, do you think it's going to be Symbian, or like they're going to use, Migo, which they got rid of? They bought another company that makes operating systems. So I
would think Windows 8.
Just what we need.
I would think Windows 8, but until they say it very clearly, I don't think you can say definitively that it's Windows 8.
I'm not a betting man, but I bet money on this.
I'd be surprised if they didn't do it. Nokia made a very short-lived netbook, remember, running Windows 7.
What was that called? Now I got to do a search for this. Let's try Bing.
Yeah, it was nice looking, but it suffered from the same problem that all netbooks have, which is
Windows 8
small keyboard, small screen.
I'm going to use Bing here. Going to look up Nokia Windows 7 notebook. Very slowly.
Look at you searching right from the address bar.
Where is the booklet 3G? That's what it was called? I forgot about that.
The booklet, yeah.
That's right. It was really expensive and confusing.
It was very expensive, yeah.
Yay.
Yeah, that's why they paired.
I'm looking for something underpowered but more expensive than all the other products in the market. Do you have something like that?
And that requires you to have a monthly service fee because it's 3G. right? So it's even better.
Yeah.
Oh, that's what they know. You know, when you're a hammer.
This is the old. This is pre-ELOP. I think it might be pre-ELOP.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's pre-ELOP. That was a different day, a different time. Back when Nokia didn't.
Can I ask a question from Twitter? Somebody just threw one out because I think Paul.
Go for it.
I think Paul answered this one today. I saw him answering this for somebody else. Why in Windows 8 do the two IEs not share common favorites?
They do. Actually, it's just that there's no interface for favorites in the Metro version. So in other words, there's no like favorites menu or whatever. Again, one of the many questions I have for these guys, if they would ever just get back to me, is that I believe they want people to move to a system where you are pinning the sites that you want the most to the start screen now. And because of the synchronization between PCs, the sites that you access most frequently do appear in the browser. So actually, Iyaz, if you click in the address bar, you'll see two things come up: frequent and pinned. Right now, if you search from here, what will also come up in the search results are your favorites that match what you're searching for. Why the favorites don't just appear there in that grid of tiles, I don't know, but that's where they come up. So it does actually access your favorites list. There's no way to save a favorite from this browser, right? There's no way to see them in a list or in a grid of tiles. But if they're there, if you've created them with the desktop version, they will be in there.
Yeah, I was trying to I was doing Command D instead of Control D, which used to be favoriting. Doesn't do anything here.
Yeah.
Remember Control D? That was a thing, right? Am I making this up? That used to be the way to do bookmarks. It's an old thing. I bet it works in IE on desktop.
Yeah. Yeah,
we can go into IE all day. I think that's the thing. I could be lost for forever.
You are correct that Control D does do.
It's a thing. Yeah, I'm happy. I'm asking you guys questions. That's a Q&A. It's the other way around, apparently. Let's go.
Let me ask you something about IE, Iyaz.
What's that, Paul? How does it work? I don't know.
How do you save a favorite?
How do you save a favorite? Carefully. Practice. One of these jokes will land. Okay, let's move on to some more questions. We have thoughts on Windows IE 10 sandboxing. What do you guys think about the whole sandboxing experience?
It's limiting. I mean, if you've used, for example, Safari on an iPad, you know that the browser works great. But every once in a while, you run into a thing where it doesn't work great. So you can't integrate LastPass in a way that's efficient and nice. And if you've used LastPass on iOS, you know that you know how that works, and you can kind of get an idea for maybe how it might work in IE Metro. But I'd like to think that there's a happy middle ground between every plugin on Earth and no plugins. For example, why doesn't Microsoft curate plugins for the browser like they curate apps through the store? I think that would be nice. Then we could have the high quality plugins be allowed through. The ones that people want the most, LastPass would be a great example. So, it is what it is. I mean, I wish it was different, and sort of pragmatically, I kind of have to move on. But I'm not thrilled with the way it is, I guess. Not thrilled.
These are the words. That'll be like when they try to sell this, the actual application. It's like not thrilled, says Paul Thurrott.
SuperSite for Windows. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Let's move on to picks because we're running out of time and lunch is coming. So I'm very excited about lunch. It's Chinese food today. Okay, we got picks of the week. What do we have? Tip of the week: instant actions to add an archive button to Hotmail. Is that there's no archive button?
I had moved from Gmail to Hotmail, and one of the things that I did miss early on was this notion of archive. I love that about Gmail. I like keeping my inbox as clean as possible with no email messages in there when possible. And in Hotmail, because it's a folder-based system like most other email accounts, you can create an archive folder and then you can drag stuff into there. You could create a crazy folder structure if you wanted to, but I don't really recommend that kind of thing. But actually, Hotmail has an advanced feature called Instant Actions, which is it puts these little buttons in line in the message previews. It allows you to take actions on that message. And one of the things you can use is like a move to action, and you can create what is essentially an archive. And so you could use that button to move that message to the archive folder. And so I wrote an article about how you can implement that, and it's something that I actually do use. And then since then, I've written a separate article that I won't get into in too much detail, but based on tips from readers, other things that you can do in Hotmail just to make the experience more efficient. So I think that the deal with Hotmail is just that a lot of people, especially in the power user end, don't look at it anymore. They don't think about it. They think of it as kind of the AOL of webmail. And the truth is Microsoft has done a lot of work to modernize this over the years. And I find it to be just as efficient as email. And of course, because I'm kind of a Microsoft guy, I use a Windows Phone. I use an Xbox, and it's tied to the same ID and everything. Having that one central account where everything goes through the same ID is very handy. So that happens to be, in my case, a Hotmail account. So it works great for me, and I don't consider myself a beginner when it comes to computers. I think it works great. So something to check out.
And for software pick of the week, you can get Office on iPad, right? How do you do that?
Yeah, sort of. I mean, this had come up before the OnLive service, but the OnLive desktop, of course, is under this kind of legal scrutiny because they might not be meeting Microsoft's licensing demands. And my expectation there is that probably the free version of OnLive desktop goes away, and that maybe people that really want to use it are going to have to pay for it. There's a lesser solution of sorts called CloudOn that just presents the three main Office apps. Word, Excel, and PowerPoint, and not the Windows desktop and not the ability to run other apps. It integrates with Dropbox for cloud storage, so there's a kind of extra step. And it's weird when you look at the apps inside of the iPad in this solution at first, they don't even look quite like Office. Like the first time you look at them, you look at the ribbon up there and you think, this looks like it almost looks like an Office clone, not Office. But actually it is Office. It is the real Office. And again, I think for occasional Office document use, this kind of thing is actually perfectly viable and is free. And again, I think a lot of people have iPads, have Dropbox accounts and so forth. And so this is just another legal way to get some of those Office apps going on the iPad, the most frequently used ones anyway.
And before we get to the Enterprise Pick of the Week and my favorite segment, Code Name of the Week, very excited about that. We're going to thank Audible.com. This episode of Windows Weekly was brought to you by Audible.com. Now, Audible.com is the leading provider of audiobooks with more than 100,000 downloadable titles across all kinds of literature. So if you like fiction, they have it. If you like nonfiction, they've got that. Want periodicals? Guess what? They have that as well. For listeners of Windows Weekly, Audible is offering a free audiobook to give you a chance to try out their service. One audiobook you might want to consider is what Paul's reading. What are you or listening to? What do you got today?
So just one quick Audible note. It has come across my desk, so to speak, that Audible for Windows Phone, the app, is in testing now and is going to be available soon. So it really is happening. And I think this is one of the big question marks that we've had over the past year and a half or 2 years. And it's there and it works and it looks neat. So that will be happening. You'll be able to access your Audible books on Windows Phone soon. The most recent Audible book that I purchased is The Gunslinger from Stephen King. I've been kind of on a Stephen King kick lately. I picked this one because it's one of his shorter books. A lot of the...
So it's only like 7,000 hours then.
Yeah, it's right. I mean, the last one we did was The Stand, which of course is the longest thing he's ever written. I believe it's 11 or 1,200 pages in print form and 48 hours on Audible or something. It's crazy, but... The Gunslinger is a book that dates back years and years. It's one of the actually the first story in the book is one of the earliest things he ever wrote. And it's a collection of novellas or long type stories. They actually get longer as the book goes on. And then it turns into a series of books that he wrote later in his life that turn into typical Stephen King books, for they are, in fact, very long in many cases. But the original Gunslinger is just a fantastic book. I'm surprised they haven't made it into a movie yet. I know there's been a lot of talk about that, and hopefully it will happen. But if you think of Stephen King as a horror writer, this is probably the best introduction to his non-horror stuff, although, of course, there are fantastical elements to it. But it's a classic book, and it's also actually very inexpensive, so if you happen to already have an Audible account, it's a good choice along those lines as well.
Well, and don't worry, listeners. If you're thinking Stephen King isn't my cup of tea, you can just download pretty much any book you want, one of your choice. Go to audible.com/windows. Again, that's audible.com/windows. So you can try out a free audiobook. We thank Audible for their sponsorship of Windows Weekly. And on to the Enterprise Pick of the Week. Mary Jo, take it away.
Yes. I found recently this series on one of the Microsoft blogs called Dr. Z's blog. It's one of the MSDN blogs. If you look up Dr. Z, you'll find it. And what's interesting is he started to put together what he's calling a series of tips for power users of Windows 8. And, they're not real true power user tips. There's some mixed in there that are, how to use PowerShell. Then there's things like how to set up a printer with Windows 8, how to show and use the run command. So he's got this growing list of tips that he's creating. And when I saw this list, I'm like, wow, why didn't this come out the day Windows 8 consumer preview came out? Instead, it came out like a week or so later. But better late than never. And he's continuing to add to it. There's a lot of good tips there. They're short. They're quick. They're something Microsoft should do more to highlight, I think, because as we're talking about Windows 8, we're saying how confusing it is for many people to use. And I think a lot of people, power user, enterprise user, or just everyday user could benefit from these. So he's also tweeting them to, what's the hashtag he's using? It's a funny hashtag. Hashtag Win8Howto. So you can also look up his tips on Twitter, too. They're pretty handy, all in one place.
They're having trouble with the actual site on IE, both versions. I'm not sure why, unless this is a new style sheet, which I doubt. It's very, very bare from what I found. But that's my quick search. I'm sure it looks a lot prettier if you actually get to it. Yeah. Codename pick of the week. I wasn't expecting something like this, but
yeah.
Go for it, Mary Jo. I don't want to give it away.
Okay. No, it fits right in with the Office 15 theme we had today. So agave is the codename of the week. And agave, it's that plant that they make agave sweetener from. Some people also mentioned it in the context of tequila today when we started talking about it. But agave sounds like a feature in Office 15 that's going to let people present a pane where they can have web extensions and other kinds of extensions to Office content running alongside what you have open. So I think Paul may have seen agave since he has the actual code. So I'm just talking about what I've read about it on The Verge, which wrote about it today. Tom Warren over there, yes. And they show a screenshot where they've got something that's related to the code there in another pane, and they're saying that you'll be able to have developers will be able to build these extensions to Office applications and somehow have them interact in a single environment where you have one side with the extension pane and the other one with your document or whatever you have open.
So web extensions in Office.
Seems like web extensions in Office.
I haven't seen it in the code, but I saw a video about it. And my understanding was that it's a new system-wide way of doing Office web extensions, that you will extend Office kind of in the way that people extend browsers today. So a way to add functionality, a way to, just add new features or whatever to Office.
Well, I think we've reached the end of our fun episode of Windows Weekly, where we tested out basically, can Iyaz figure out Windows 8? And apparently,
you're smarter than we give you credit for.
With the help of experts, yes. So as long as you have Paul Thurrott and Mary Jo Foley with you, and anybody else who's been using this, you will be able to use Windows 8 out of the box, just like that. Or they'll run this video as a tutorial.
I will spring out of the box like a jack in the box.
Exactly. Or your book will be there. Paul, where can people find you on the internet? Where?
Primarily at winsupersite.com.
What about secondarily?
And, I was just laughing at my lower third there. Generally speaking, that's an accurate description of how I am. And also on Twitter at Thurrott, my last name, Thurrott.
What about tertiary? What would you pick there?
Tertiary?
Yeah, I guess tertiarily.
Primarily. In Dedham. What do you mean?
He said primarily, secondarily. I was asking what your third pick was.
Somebody asked me one time what I did in Dedham, and I said, I pay taxes.
Mary Jo, where can people find you online and everything that you cover? I'm pretty sure you cover Microsoft stuff. Pretty much all about Microsoft.
Yes. In fact, that's my site name, allaboutmicrosoft.com over on ZDNet. That's my main blog. Also on Twitter at Mary Jo Foley, all one word.
And that does it for me. I'm Iyaz Akhtar, and Leo Laporte will be back next week, and he'll be over there in his office where he normally does the show. So thanks for watching and or listening, or both.